Weirdly, Earthworm Jim didn't quite resonate with 8-year-old me in the same way it did my friends. The hype was real back then in the playground, especially with the boys, who loved the childish, disgusting humor, cartoonish graphics, and funny noises. And yeah, I must admit that even I laughed the first time I launched that cow into the air. Perhaps my retrospective disdain of Earthworm Jim just stems from jealousy. Never having a Mega Drive or SNES back then, the only version of this I could play at home was the catastrophic Game Boy port, a muddy, impossible mess that took the already ambiguous platforming and ran it through a meat grinder. I did actually rent the game from a now defunct rental store, and it ruined my entire weekend. I persisted with it though, only for my so-called friends to take the mick out of me on Monday morning. "You still play Game Boy?" they'd guffaw. "You're stupid." Suffered I have. Not quite as traumatic as the DMG version, however, is the Game Boy Advance one, which is a much more accurate edition that, on the surface at least, seems like it would be a welcome entry into the portable ranks, just long enough after the original to have some nostalgia value on a system that could theoretically actually run it. It's not wholly successful in that, but in fairness, neither is it a complete car crash. Objectively, Earthworm Jim has never really been considered to have peak platforming or shooter controls, a 2D platformer that I mainly struggled with due to not being able to interpret where the actual platforms and unpassable objects were. You'll travel through a series of wildly disconnected levels, from a junkyard run by a guy who belches up dead fish to the hilariously highbrow city of Buttville. The game certainly thrives on the absurdity of it all. If you're into random image humor and lowbrow gags, then sure, there are a few cheap laughs to be had. First off though, with my complaints, I cannot be having jump be the B button and A shoot. I know I'm flogging a dead horse here. You probably literally do that in the game somewhere actually. But don't get them the wrong way around, come on. It's less important on the SNES or Genesis, where there are more than 2 buttons to use, but on the Game Boy or the GBA, it's far too ingrained, and I just never felt comfortable with the setup. Not only that, but the input delay here is unreal. If you want to jump, then shoot, there's easily a second's worth of time in between the commands. It's never just instant, like you expect a platformer to be. You can't shoot and jump at the same time, nor can you move while firing. You'll just shoot in different directions. Also, having finite ammunition for your weapon is a bit of a joke, especially when some areas demand you to fire behind you to propel Jim along a wire. Your gun should not be running out of bullets in a situation like this. The lack of a save feature, or at the very least a password system, is a real oversight in Earthworm Jim. Not that this is a monolithically long game, but still, it's hard enough that finishing it in one sitting is a bit of an ask. Don't expect to see those later levels too often. The level design was always super varied though, and the logical disconnect between stages doesn't really matter. I mean, you're a sentient, gun-toting worm who can hover using his head. What the hell does logic have to do with anything here? Plus, the level names are funny. You'll be relieved to know, or perhaps not, depends on your taste, that the sound design is fairly faithful to the originals, right down to the questionable voice acting. Like I say, never my favorite game from basically any aspect. The smaller screen notwithstanding, it's fair to say that the GBA is at least on a par with the classic 16-bit machines, if not even above them slightly. How is it then that this port looks worse? Plenty of console to Game Boy Advance ports at the very least match what came before, many improve on it. Could be down to originators Shiny Entertainment passing the work over to Game Titan, whoever they are/were. It was still early on for the GBA's lifespan. This was practically a launch title in North America, maybe that's why. It's not so much the graphics themselves, which are pretty faithful, but it's the choppy animations. Nothing here ever feels smooth, which when combined with the slippery, and also backwards controls, really makes for an uncomfortable game to play. There is an argument to be made for that being on brand with Earthworm Jim. The whole game makes me uncomfortable, and yeah, if moving your playable character around could ever be said to feel gross, then it almost certainly applies here.